Don't usually come in that way, but as you can see, it's kind of worth checking out. The Peppermill has made massive improvements on the sportsbook. It might not quite be the Venetian, but that thing is looking sweet with those new screens. A couple of interesting hands here after a few hours of play here on this Thursday. I'm gonna head to the car and run a few of those down. All right, last hand here comes against a very well-known poker pro by the name of Dan O'Brien. I'm sure some of you know him. He's been a pro for quite a few years now. And he definitely wants his name out there. He's been on Poker After Dark in the attempt to get that, so I don't feel bad mentioning him by name here. A guy that I don't want in the game, obviously. So pretty disappointed to see Dan sit down in this 3-5 game after recently playing a $20,000 buy-in on Poker After Dark. I think this is a little low for him stakes-wise, but he comes into the game. And this hand he raises to 20. A tournament pro makes the call, and I'm in the small blind with Queen Jack off suit, and I make the call. So 60 in the pot, and the flop comes out King 7-9 with 2 diamonds. Dan, who raised it pre-flop, does not continuation bet. The player on his left checks. So we see a turn card that comes an offsuit queen. So diamonds don't come in, but the queen does, and now I have second pair. I thought about leading out here out of the blind, but ultimately I decided just to check. Dan fires $60, and the player on his left quickly calls the $60. I'm not going anywhere here. I don't think raising is going to be a great play either, so that leaves only one option left. I call as well. So we go 3 ways to a river, which comes an offsuit 5. So front door diamonds brick out, and I'm sitting there with a second pair and a jack kicker. I decided to check again here with Dan having bet the turn. He bet about pot on the turn, 60 into 60. And now with 240 in the pot on the river, bets pot again, fires 240. The player on his left thinks about it for some time, and that gave me the opportunity to think about it too, and I'd pretty much already decided that if he called, I was not going to overcall here with just second pair. It's possible that that could still be the right play, but it's going to be really hard to beat both players at that point. That said, he folds. So now it's up to me, heads up against O'Brien, and I just didn't see what he could have here given the line that he took. He checked the flop after raising pre-flop, and then bet pot on the turn when a queen came in. It's possible he could have ace-queen here, but that's a heck of a value bet for just second pair. Hard to see him making it. It feels a little more polarized to me. The 5 brings in 6-8, which if he had, I would have expected him to bet the flop with, considering it's one of the best hands, or one of the best flops that he could have had for that hand. He could have 8-10. I would think the same thing though, that if he flopped open-ended, raising with a hand pre-flop as weak as 6-8 or 8-10, that you would want to take advantage of your equity, trying to take the pot down when you flop such a high amount of equity. So it led me to believe that given the fact that both opponents in the hand checked, that he was just bluffing. So I make the call and he says, good call. He shows me ace-10. So not an easy guy to win money from, but I'm able to do it there.
Never thought that we'd go this far. Don't stop now. And reaching for a distant star. Don't don't stop now. Isn't it strange how we're safe and home? So that counting days until a second glow. If you're gonna break those shades, you have to let.
Checking in here, 5:45 in the a.m. downtown Reno for a morning live shot. It's a good time of year to be doing it. You'll at least have some light out during this time of the year. An update with regards to my work situation. I've basically been told that for the foreseeable future, I'll be anchoring the weekend shows. I have not yet been offered the job itself, but I'm told that I'm doing the job itself for the time being. So pretty soon I'll no longer have to wake up at 2:30 a.m., which I must say I'm looking forward to. And I do expect that to help my poker game, because on Thursday and Friday nights I'll be able to stay out as late as I want, hopefully, if I can readjust. But Saturday and Sunday nights I won't be able to play because I'll be working until midnight. I can still potentially play a couple hours before, but will not be able to play at night. So that's the downside to this new situation, but at least it definitely gives me a chance to advance career-wise, but may not help poker short term. Speaking of poker short term, I do have a couple of hands that I'm going to mention. Do not actually have time to mention them right now, so I think I'll probably just end up talking about them on my way home from work today. That was a look from this morning's live shot downtown Reno. I thought about talking about some of these things then, but just didn't get around to it. So coming to you here later on in the afternoon, a lot of interesting hands played these past several days at the Peppermill that I wanted to bring up here. And I'm going to talk about two hands that come against very different opponents. One of them is the ultimate example of a recreational player and the guy that you want to try to play a lot of hands with. The other is a guy who you want to try to avoid, the pro, a guy that's a couple of years younger than me, and he's definitely a better player than me. I won't hide from that. Definitely a better overall player than me. I think in No Limit Cash I can probably rival him, but that said, he's very good there too. So I got into a hand where I had basically been folding every hand. I didn't really play a single hand the first hour that I was in this game. And part of the reason was that he was in the game. I didn't want to play any hands against this guy. But that said, I decided to finally get in there with a marginal holding. And that came when I picked up pocket deuces under the gun +1. And rather than just open limp, which I rarely find to be a good play, I decided just to make the $15 raise. And this pro that I'm talking about calls in the hijack. And the blinds both fold. So we go heads up to a flop. It comes 10-7 deuce rainbow. So I flop bottom set. I bet $25, and the hijack makes it 75. I thought about just calling here and keeping the pot small for several reasons, one of which is the fact that I'm simply playing against a pro, and keeping the pot small I don't think is ever a terrible idea. But I also think that if he has a hand like Ace-10 or King-10, he might raise here a decent amount of the time. Certainly not every time, but a lot of the time he's going to raise because he figures to have me beat a lot. So I go ahead and click it back. I make it 150, and he makes the call. So with $330 in the pot, we go to a turn that comes a 3. That's certainly not a card that figures to change anything, so I go ahead and bet 125. Try to keep him in there with all of his 10s, certainly. You can still have 8-9 potentially, trying to draw out on a straight, so I feel pretty good about my hand. I bet the 125 and he makes the call. We go to the river, which comes a 5. No flush possibilities. I bet out 225, thinking maybe he could put me on a bluff here. Maybe he has 2 pair. Maybe he was slow playing a big pair from the start. I have about $320 behind after I make this $225 bet, and he says I'm all in. So my heart kind of sank when I saw that, but at the same time, I'm still sitting here against the set. I'm still sitting here with a set against an aggressive opponent, a guy who's been known to try and run over me in the past. I make the call, and he shows pocket sevens. Definitely makes sense. I figured he'd be re-raising before the flop with pocket tens, so I had already ruled that hand out. I thought that he might be re-raising me before the flop two with sevens. I've seen him do it with a lot worse, but he gets the better of me here, and within 1 hour of playing on that day, felt it. I felt pretty bad about that hand. Certainly, I mean, the way that I played it, I tried to avoid the best players. That's a big part of my game, and it's never let me down. That's the problem, by the way. If any of you guys come to Reno and are looking to play in the big game, that's the problem with it, because the big game, which is a 5-10 game, but it plays like a 10-20. It plays much bigger than a 5-10. The big game is huge, and it's all pros, just about. There's a couple of non-pros in the game, which, yes, they do help drive the game, but it doesn't seem to me like they're there enough, or there's enough of them there enough at the time for it to be worth these pros' time. But what's happened is you keep having these pros move here, and they realize how good the game is capable of being, and they just assume it's always going to be that good, when in reality it's not always that good, and in reality it only goes 2 days a week. So it's kind of bizarre to me that that's the case. So I usually stay out of that game and stay in the 3-5 game, but that said, still, it's been an interesting run for me of late. Now, this next hand that I want to point out here is kind of the opposite of what I intend to do on this vlog. That last hand's a good example of the kind of hands that I will have on this vlog, and I'm more than open to how you guys would have played that hand that I just talked about, meaning if you think that you should just fold pocket deuces pre-flop, which is probably the best play overall, but taking that aside, if you do play it and you end up in that spot, do you re-raise the flop? Can you fold the river? Do you just bet all in at a different time? There's a number of different things that you could do, right? I'm willing to listen to any of that. This next hand, I'm not going to be willing to listen to any feedback on it, and the reason for that is because it comes against a player who's kind of a maniac, and you have to really know him in order to know anything about how to play the hand. So that said, it's just kind of an interesting hand. Game flow was big in this hand because he was getting ready to leave, and the game was full of a lot of guys who were pretty tight. So he's looking for me to give him action, and he's kind of egging me on, and I'm looking to play a hand with him. I'm losing. I'm ready to play a hand with him, and he's playing basically every hand. All right, so he is in a spot where he's around back. He's in the cutoff, and he throws in $20, and I'm in the big blind with pocket eights. There had been one other limper in the hand, so I go ahead and raise it up. I make it 100, fully expecting him to call me with worse in this spot. The weird thing was, the guy who had limped in, he calls as well. And he only has $180 total. So he calls $100 with only 80 behind. So I'm like, why is this guy not just going all in now? Either way, I'd never seen that guy before. But the original raiser, of course, makes the call. He's got me covered. And at this point, I'm actually pretty short stacked. I only have about 500 behind at this point. I'm usually playing about 1,000 deep, but I've been running bad, so got about 500 behind, and the flop comes 4-4 deuce. So pretty good for my pocket eights against a range that pretty much includes any two cards. Now, he's not going to have 7 deuce off here. He's not going to have queen 4 off here, but he's going to have the majority of hands you could be dealt to. I mean, 9-10 off he'll have, 7-8 offsuit he will have, you know, queen 9 offsuit I think he can have. So these are all possibilities, and it shows how wide he's playing. It's always kind of interesting dealing with guys in those spots. So I'm feeling pretty good. I lead out for 100 again. The guy who only has $80 left, of course, puts those into the pot. And then it's back around to the cutoff, and he, I'm hoping, will just put in the 100 instead. He says 250. Now at this point, I've only got about the 400 left, maybe a little under that actually. It's probably closer to 380, 370. So I'm just kind of stunned here. I've already committed 200 to this pot on a 4-4 deuce board against a guy who's playing any two cards. I decide to go with it here. I don't think that he's going to just think that he can shove me off the hand. I think that he's going to have a number of outs he can hit, a number of over cards he can hit in this spot. Or maybe he had me the whole way, which is kind of hard for me to believe. So I toss in the rest of my stack, and he shows 4-6. So, not suited, by the way. So this shows what we're dealing with here. And again, this guy is the nicest guy in the world, and I have no problem. If I'm going to lose to someone, I'd prefer it to be him, and I've no problem losing this pot to him, which I do. I never saw the hand of this guy who was just playing the 180, but it was just frustrating in particular because it busted me for the second straight day. The hand with the set came the day before, and this hand the day after. It was a Saturday, Sunday, back-to-back couple of hands, and getting felted both days in a row never feels good, and a fairly significant downswing here, a little bit worse than what I dealt with going to Los Angeles. So it stings, to say the least, but that is poker, and that is the name of the game. So kind of rough dealing with the Golden Knights losing 3 straight games and me losing back-to-back-to-back sessions at the poker table. A lot of losing going on right now, and it hurts, but got to get back to it. So that'll wrap up this edition of the vlog. If you have the chance, please subscribe if you like what you've seen so far. And follow me on Instagram at Ben Deach, posting primarily poker-related stuff over there. So appreciate any followers that I can get there as well. I'll see you next time.